Hello everyone, welcome to Eye on Africa. Here are the headlines for Tuesday, May the 4th. The president of the Democratic Republic of Congo declares a state of siege for two of the country's provinces after a major surge in violence and killings in recent months. Save the Children says the Tigray conflict has led to the separation of some 5,000 children from their parents. Now, some of those children are returning home only to find their families gone. And France tries to project an image of neutrality in Chad as the Elysée Palace welcomes members of the country's civil society who are critical of the ruling junta. Glad to have you with us. We begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the president has ordered a military takeover of two of the country's provinces, North Kivu and Ituri. The regions have seen a surge in attacks by armed militias and intercommunal violence. Hundreds of people have died there since the beginning of the year. Shirley Sidbon has the latest.
By placing two regions, North Kivu and Ituri, under siege, Félix Tshisekedi invoked the 85th article of the DRC Constitution. The president can order the military and police to take over if severe circumstances immediately threaten the independence or integrity of the national territory. The two regions have seen growing attacks, massacres of civilians. Under the state of siege, the military and police will take over civilian authorities. They will be able to search any house at any time, seize any weapon, arrest people if authorities believe they can endanger public order. Starting Thursday, the region's courts will be military courts. North Kivu's governor and some other residents hailed the decision, hoping to end the violence. An estimated 122 different armed groups are active in the two regions, starting with the so-called Allied Democratic Forces, or ADF, affiliated with the Islamic State group and blamed for many of the massacres. Others, though, are concerned by the consequences the siege may have on DRC's human rights record. Several military officers have been accused of human rights violations. A UN report from March says human rights abuses have increased by 32% since February.
Well, more than 10 million people in those two provinces will now be living under a state of siege for the next month. Here are some of the reactions heard on the streets of Goma today.
Nous l'avons longtemps désiré et pour nous c'est une opportunité de voir la paix et la sécurité retourner ou même être rétablies dans notre province du Nord Kivu.
Le problème aujourd'hui n'est pas de similitariser la région. Qui sont les traîtres? Parce que l'ennemi externe qu'on a identifié depuis, ça fait déjà 5 ans, comme des ADF, ne peuvent pas avoir de la force s'ils n'ont pas de complices à l'intérieur.
The armed forces of Nigeria have rejected suggestions that they should take over from President Muhammadu Buhari. The 78-year-old is facing mounting pressure over rising insecurity in the country. In a statement, the army said it would continue to, quote, fully support the government as well as protect Nigeria's democracy. Last week, lawmakers urged Buhari to declare a nationwide state of emergency following a month of almost daily attacks, kidnappings, and killings. And just these past 2 days, more evidence of that rising insecurity in Nigeria. 35 people were killed by jihadists in two attacks in northern Borno state. 5 troops and 15 militiamen are among the dead. The first attack took place on Sunday when fighters of the Islamic State West Africa province arrived in several trucks and stormed the town of Ajiri, along with its military base. Troops returned to the base before it was stormed again on Monday. Save the Children, the international NGO, estimates some 5,000 children have been separated from their parents because of the conflict in the Tigray. The organization says that today many of them live in cramped conditions and have no choice but to sleep in rooms with dozens of unrelated adults. France 24's Maria Gert Nicolescu has the details from Addis Ababa.
According to Save the Children, most of the children who were separated from their parents in the Tigray conflict were displaced from their homes due to the violence. Over 1.5 million people were forced into displacement since the Tigray conflict started 6 months ago. Most of them found refuge in cities such as Adigrat and Shire. Some of the parents were also killed in the conflict. Civilians were not spared from the violence, and there's been several reports of violent massacres against civilians. There's widespread concern for these unaccompanied and separated children who lack the necessary protection against physical and sexual abuse, as well as the necessary medication, shelter, nutrition, and drinking water. Sexual violence and gang rapes, including against underage girls, have been widely reported throughout the region. There's now almost 1,000 rape cases that have been officially recorded, but the real number is likely to be much, much higher. A health official from the appointed interim administration in Tigray said that women are also being kept in sexual slavery. Education is another concern. The UNICEF says that 1.4 million children have been kept out of school for over a year now. Many schools have been transformed into displacement camps, and with the ongoing insecurity in Tigray, it is not clear when schools will be able to reopen.
The European Union is ditching plans to send observers to Ethiopia for next month's parliamentary election. In a statement, EU top diplomat Josep Borrell said conditions had not been met on communication systems and on the mission's independence. He also said the bloc would not monitor preparations for the June 5th vote. A spokesman for the country's foreign ministry explained that this was the first time that observers claimed there was an issue with the communication system that they would be using. Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan is in Kenya for a 2-day state visit aimed at improving trade relations between the two neighbors. She was welcomed by President Uhuru Kenyatta and given a full military parade. The relationship between the two countries had soured as a result of the former Tanzanian leader's denial of COVID-19. Among other things, he had refused to implement border measures to contain the spread of the disease. The Tanzanian and Kenyan president have now signed an agreement to ensure the smooth flow of trade and people between the two nations. Now, while Chadian President Idriss Déby was in power, France was often accused of being too close to the regime, the criticism that still stands after French President Emmanuel Macron attended the late leader's funeral last month. Now, in an attempt to show more neutrality, the Elysée Palace has received a delegation of Chad's civil society, which is strongly critical of the military junta. Harold Girard and Nicolas Germain have this report.
Michaela Ngebla is a journalist and Chadian opposition activist. With other members of Chad's civil society, he was received at the Elysée Palace by those who advised the French president on African issues. Paris has long been criticized for being too close to the Déby regime in Chad. Idriss Déby died last month, and his son Mohamed is now leader of the junta that replaced him.
À partir d'ici, j'essaie d'influer à travers des plaidoyers, des rencontres officielles auprès des autorités françaises et auprès de l'Union européenne, et même auprès des députés français, et même des acteurs politiques français, et même de la société civile, pour faire en sorte que la situation du Tchad soit dans l'agenda, en tant que question prioritaire dans l'agenda des politiques, de la société civile et des autres acteurs français.
Mohamed Déby has been designated to lead Chad for 18 months and organize the next presidential election. Michaela Ngebla says his rule is unconstitutional. Chad's ambassador in Paris defended the junta.
Ce n'est pas le fils d'Idriss Déby qui est désigné à la tête de la transition. C'est le général Mohamed Idriss Déby. Il a été désigné non pas à cause de son père, mais plutôt à cause de ses mérites.
Several members of the opposition have recently joined the junta's transitional government, a decision that was slammed by many other opposition figures. They claim that Déby's son will be just as authoritarian as his father was during his 30 years in power.
Guinea has become the first country to adopt a law protecting albinos. Under the new law, those who commit ritual killings or abductions against albinos will face heavy penalties. Our correspondents met a woman who has been trying to change mentalities in the West African country for 10 years. Sarah Sako and Malik Diakite sent us this report from Conakry.
Bonjour. This morning, Hajiratu Ba and her team are talking to pupils at a private school in Conakry. Ne soyez pas timide, dites-moi, qu'est-ce que vous pensez de l'albinos?
The session aims to dispel some of the damaging superstitions about albinism. Albinos lack melanin, the pigment found in skin and hair. Activists hope that raising awareness about the persecution suffered by those with this genetic condition will help the children speak out against abuse. 14-year-old Alpha has witnessed discrimination.
J'ai entendu un grand insulter un viol. Il dit que c'est les Allah qui sont maudits. Quand je vois ça, des fois, je me sens mal parce que c'est pas de leur faute.
Hajiratu has been lobbying to protect albinos for more than 10 years. She says it's easier to change children's minds.
Il faut de notre côté multiplier cette sensibilisation, leur expliquer que c'est un phénomène génétique, ça n'a rien à voir avec la sorcellerie, ou bien parce que certaines disent que la mère a été infidèle, c'est pour ça qu'elle a eu, il y a tout ça.
The journalist lives with her mother, Mariama, and considers herself lucky. She had a happy childhood and a loving family, but even so, it was difficult for the family to escape the stigma of albinism.
Yimɓe son jammi inna mi heɓi jinna ala sonja ko min aɓaali fi o min ni ɗum ɗon na hay hunde ɓa Allah okkilan mi jaɓay ko Allah okkilanno yo goɗɗo wolu ko faala ɗum na haaju am.
The family is hopeful that a new law will help protect more albinos.
Que les personnes atteintes d'albinisme puissent vivre en sécurité, plus s'épanouir, plus accéder aux services sociaux de base, plus travailler.
Under the law, anyone found guilty of committing ritual killings faces life imprisonment, and those found guilty of exploiting albinos or forcing them to beg could be condemned for up to 20 years.
That wraps up Eye on Africa on this Tuesday. Thank you for watching. The news continues on France 24 in just a moment.